private jet plunged through the storm like a falling stone. Red warning lights flashed. Alarms screamed through the chaos. Elena Martinez, the billionaire tech mogul, slammed against the leather wall. Blood trickled down her forehead. She had never been so terrified. "We're going to die," she screamed. Her manager cowered under his seat, sobbing and praying. In the back, Silas crawled across the floor. His mechanic's coveralls were stained with oil and grease. These people had treated him like garbage for 3 hours, called him dirty, made him sit with the cargo. Now they were all going to die together. "What are you doing, you filthy peasant?" the manager shrieked. "Stay away from the cockpit. You'll kill us all." Silas ignored him. His hands found the jammed cockpit door. With one powerful kick, it exploded open. Inside, both pilots lay unconscious. The ground was rushing up to meet them at 300 miles per hour.
Hello, friends. I'm Vera. My heart is racing just watching that. Have you ever been in a situation where the person you looked down on was the only one who could save you? Sometimes help comes from the dirtiest hands, but the purest hearts. What would you do in that moment? Let me know below.
3 hours earlier, Silas knelt on the cold concrete of the private airfield. His hands shook as he clutched a crumpled photo of his 7-year-old daughter. Lily lay dying in a hospital bed 200 miles away. This was the only flight before the storm hit. "Please," he begged the manager in his oil-stained coveralls. "My little girl needs me. She's having surgery tonight, and this is my only chance to get there." The manager looked down at Silas like he was a diseased animal. "Get away from me, you filthy peasant," the manager sneered. He kicked Silas's toolbox, sending wrenches and screwdrivers scattering across the tarmac. "Miss Martinez doesn't travel with your kind." Silas scrambled to collect his tools. His hands trembled worse now. The PTSD from his flying days made stress unbearable. But he had to try again. "Sir, please, I'll pay anything. I'll sit anywhere." "You smell like motor oil and desperation," the manager spat. "Find another way." Footsteps clicked across the concrete. Elena Martinez approached in a designer coat that cost more than Silas made in a year. Her silver heels never touched a dirty surface. Her world was clean, ordered, expensive. She glanced at her diamond watch. "What's the delay?" "Nothing important, Miss Martinez. Just some vagrant begging for charity." Elena studied Silas for a moment. She saw his shaking hands, the photo he clutched, the quiet desperation in his eyes. She wasn't cruel, just disconnected from poverty. "Let him on," she said finally. But put him in the cargo area. I don't want to smell engine grease during my conference calls." Silas's eyes filled with tears of relief. "Thank you. God bless you, ma'am." The manager's face twisted with disgust, but he obeyed. He shoved Silas toward the plane's rear entrance as they walked past the engine. Silas paused. 20 years of aircraft experience made his ears sensitive to mechanical sounds. Something was wrong. A high-pitched whining that shouldn't be there. Metal stress in the turbine assembly. "Move it, grease monkey," the manager barked, shoving Silas up the stairs. Silas stumbled into the cargo area. He wanted to warn them about the engine sound. But who would listen to a dirty mechanic? Rich people never listened to people like him. The plane's door sealed shut with a pressurized hiss. Silas sat among the luggage, holding Lily's photo against his chest. Outside, storm clouds gathered like a black fist. In 90 minutes, that engine would fail at 30,000 feet, and the only person who could save them would be the man they treated like trash. 30,000 feet above the storm clouds. Silas sat cramped between designer suitcases and golf bags. The cargo area was cold and dark. He could hear Elena's voice through the thin wall, making million-dollar deals on her phone. His own phone buzzed with a text message from the hospital. "Mr. Torres, Lily is asking for you. Surgery moved up to 8 p.m. Please hurry." Silas stared at the message until the words blurred. His hands started shaking again. 8 p.m. was in 2 hours by the time this plane landed and he caught a taxi to the hospital. It might be too late. He knocked softly on the partition wall. "Excuse me? Could I get some water?" The manager's voice came back sharp and annoyed. "What did you say?" "Water, sir. Please. Just a small cup." Silas heard footsteps. The door to the cargo area opened. The manager stood there with a half-empty water bottle and a look of pure disgust. "Here's your water. Beggar." He threw the bottle at Silas's feet. Water splashed across his coveralls and soaked into his shoes. "Drink up and shut up. Miss Martinez is trying to work." The door slammed shut again. Silas picked up the bottle with trembling hands. He took a small sip and saved the rest. He didn't know when he'd get more. 10 minutes later, the plane began to shake. At first, it was gentle, like turbulence. But Silas felt something different in the vibration pattern. He'd felt this before, 20 years ago, in military aircraft with engine problems. The shaking got worse. Silas pressed his ear to the wall. Through the metal, he could hear the pilots talking in the cockpit. Their voices sounded strained. Something about hydraulic pressure dropping. He pounded on the partition wall. "Hey, something's wrong with the left engine. I can feel it in the wing vibration." The manager's voice exploded through the wall. Shut your mouth, you crazy vagrant. Stop scaring the passengers." "Sir, please listen. I know aircraft. The engine mounting is failing. You need to..." The cargo door burst open. The manager's face was red with rage. "I warned you." He grabbed a roll of duct tape from a maintenance kit. "One more word and I'll tie you up like the animal you are." Silas raised his hands in surrender, but inside, his pilot instincts were screaming warnings. The vibration pattern was getting worse. Metal fatigue. Structural failure. They had maybe 20 minutes before something catastrophic happened. He sat in forced silence as the plane continued to shake. In the main cabin, Elena noticed her coffee cup rattling. "Is this normal turbulence?" Everything's fine, Miss Martinez," the manager assured her. Just rough air." But it wasn't fine. Silas could feel the aircraft's frame groaning under stress. Metal fatigue was spreading through the wing assembly like a crack in ice. He pressed his ear to the wall again. The hydraulic pumps were struggling. Warning alarms were going off in the cockpit, but the pilots weren't responding properly. Their voices sounded slurred. Food poisoning. Silas realized. 15 minutes later. The flight attendant ran to the cockpit. Silas heard her scream through the thin walls. Captain, wake up, oh God. They're both unconscious." Elena's voice rose in panic. "What's happening?" "Food poisoning," the attendant sobbed. "They ate the same meal at the airport. They're both out cold. Nobody else knows how to fly this plane." The plane lurched hard to the left. Coffee cups and phones went flying. Elena slammed against her window. "Can someone call for help?" she screamed. "We're too high," the attendant cried. "Radio's not working in this storm." The plane began to drop. Slowly at first, then faster. The autopilot system, damaged by the engine vibration Silas had detected, flickered and died. Panic erupted in the main cabin. "We're going to crash," Elena screamed. The manager's voice pierced through the chaos. "That crazy homeless guy, he said something about the engine. Maybe he sabotaged us. The vagrant in the back, he was pounding on the walls, talking about engine problems. He must have done something." Silas heard footsteps storming toward the cargo door. The manager burst in. His face twisted with desperate fury. "You did this," he screamed, grabbing Silas by the collar. "You sabotaged our plane." "I tried to warn you," Silas said quietly. The engine mounting was failing. I could hear it. The plane dropped again. Harder this time. Both men were thrown against the wall. Through the chaos, Silas heard Elena crying in the main cabin. A young woman who would die because of pride and prejudice, just like Lily might die if he didn't get to that hospital. Silas closed his eyes and made a choice that would change everything.
Oh my goodness, I can't breathe. Can you imagine the terror? And that manager treating a father like garbage while danger is right outside the window? It breaks my heart to see good people suffer like this. But friends, hang on. Because karma has a way of balancing the scales.
Silas pushed past the panicked manager and stumbled into the main cabin. Elena looked up at him with desperate, tear-filled eyes. "Can you help us?" she sobbed. "Do you know anything about planes?" Before Silas could answer, the manager grabbed his arm. "Stay back. This vagrant probably sabotaged us." The manager's voice cracked with hysteria. "I can handle this." He pushed past Silas and stormed into the cockpit. "I've played flight simulators. I know how planes work." The manager dropped into the pilot's seat and grabbed the controls. The plane lurched violently to the right, and coffee cups and laptops crashed to the floor. Elena screamed as she was thrown against the window. "Pull up! Pull up!" the manager shouted, yanking the control stick backward. But he pulled too hard, too fast. The plane's nose shot upward at a dangerous angle. The engine screamed as they fought against gravity for a moment. It seemed like they might recover, and then the plane stalled. The aircraft hung motionless in the air for one terrible second. Then it flipped over and began falling straight down like a rock. The manager screamed and abandoned the controls, stumbling out of the cockpit with his hands over his face. "I can't do it. We're all going to die." Elena was pressed against the ceiling, held there by G-forces. Her face was pale with terror. "Someone help us, please." Silas forced himself toward the cockpit against the crushing pressure. His legs felt like lead. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely grip the doorframe. 20 years of buried memories crashed over him like a tsunami. The sound of alarms, the smell of smoke, the faces of his fellow pilots as their plane spiraled toward the ground. His fault. All his fault. He had frozen at the controls then. Panic had paralyzed him while good men died. "I can't," he whispered, sliding down the wall. "I can't do it again." His daughter's face appeared in his mind. Lily, lying in a hospital bed, waiting for Daddy to come home. The text message. "Surgery moved to 8 p.m. Please hurry." If this plane crashed, she would die alone. But if he touched those controls and froze again, everyone would die anyway. Silas pulled out his phone and looked at Lily's picture. Her bright smile, her trusting eyes. She believed her daddy could fix anything. The plane spun faster. Elena's terrified sobs echoed through the cabin. Silas forced himself to stand up. His hands were still shaking. But he stumbled into the cockpit anyway. The control panel was a chaos of flashing red lights and screaming alarms. The artificial horizon showed they were in a vertical dive. Ground proximity warnings blared. "Pull up! Pull up!" Altitude, 8,000 feet. 7,000. 6,000. The numbers dropped like a countdown to death. Silas dropped into the pilot's seat. His hands hovered over the controls, trembling like leaves in a hurricane. The same controls that had failed him 20 years ago. The same nightmare. The same impossible choice between action and paralysis through the cockpit windows. He could see the ground rushing toward them, trees and fields growing larger by the second, a small town with white houses and green lawns, people down there who had no idea death was falling from the sky. They had maybe 60 seconds before impact. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. 20 years ago, his squadron leader had died because Silas froze at the controls. Good men who trusted him, men with families who never came home. Please. Elena's voice came from behind him, barely audible over the alarms. Please save us. Silas closed his eyes and thought of Lily one more time, her voice on the phone. Daddy, when are you coming home? Her small hand holding his picture by her hospital bed. Then he grabbed the controls, but his hands were still trembling. And 60 seconds might not be enough to overcome 20 years of trauma. 5,000 feet? 4,000. 3,000. The ground filled the windscreen now. Silas could see individual houses, cars on highways, people who would never know how close death had come. His hands shook violently on the controls. The same paralysis that had killed his squadron was happening again, and the stick felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I can't, he whispered. I can't do this. 2,500 feet behind him. Elena gripped her seat. The flight attendant was praying in Spanish. The manager had curled into a ball on the floor, sobbing. 2,000 feet. Then Silas heard it. A small voice in his memory, not the screams of dying pilots from 20 years ago, something else. Daddy, you're my hero. Lily's voice put it from last week. When he'd fixed her broken toy airplane, she had no idea her father was a failure. To her. He was the strongest man in the world. 2,500 feet. The trembling in Silas's hand stopped. Just like that, 20 years of shaking, 20 years of fear. Gone in an instant. He wasn't Gabriel the Eagle Torres anymore. The squadron leader who froze under pressure. He was Lily's daddy, and daddies don't let their little girls down. 1,000 feet. Silas pulled the stick back with surgical precision. Not the panicked yanking the manager had done. Smooth, controlled, exact. He felt the plane's response through his hands, like a musician feels music through his fingers. The nose came up slowly. The vertical dive became a steep descent. The steep descent became a controlled glide. 800 feet, 600 feet, 400 feet. Silas banked left to avoid a water tower. His movements were fluid, instinctive. This was what he'd been born to do. Elena watched in amazement as the panicked, shaking mechanic transformed into something else entirely. His posture straightened. His movements became precise and confident. This wasn't a scared vagrant anymore. This was a pilot, 200 feet, 100 feet, through the radio static. Silas heard a voice. Unidentified aircraft. You are approaching restricted airspace. Identify yourself immediately. Silas keyed the microphone. When he spoke, his voice carried the calm authority of a man who had stared death in the face and won. Air traffic control. This is Eagle 1, declaring emergency. Request immediate vector to nearest runway. I have unconscious crew and hydraulic failure. Eagle 1, sir. That call sign has been retired for 20 years. Who is this? Silas smiled grimly. Someone who should have used it a long time ago. Copy, Eagle 1. We're clearing runway 27 for emergency landing. Emergency crew standing by. Negative. Control, I'm putting her down in the field. No time for the runway. 50 feet, 30 feet, 20 feet. Silas flared the aircraft perfectly. The wheels touched down on a farmer's field, soft as a feather. The plane rolled to a stop between two rows of corn, intact and safe. For a moment, nobody moved. The only sound was the wind whistling through the corn stalks. Then Elena started crying. Not from fear this time, from relief, from gratitude, from the realization that the man she'd treated like garbage had just saved her life. Silas sat in the pilot's seat, staring at his steady hands. 20 years of nightmares were over. He had finally forgiven himself. Emergency vehicles appeared on the horizon, their lights flashing across the field, but before anyone could reach them. Silas quietly gathered his tools and slipped out the emergency exit. He had a daughter to see. And for the first time in 20 years, he felt worthy to look her in the eye. The next morning, Elena woke up in a hospital bed with bruised ribs and a bandaged forehead. She was alive. That dirty, shaking mechanic had saved her life. Her first phone call was to her head of security. "Find him," she ordered. "The man who was in our cargo hold. I don't care what it costs." "Ma'am, we don't even have his last name." "Then find it. Check every airport maintenance record, every employment database. I want to know who he is." It took 6 hours. "Ma'am," her assistant's voice was shaking up. "You're not going to believe this." Elena stared at the file on her tablet. Captain Gabriel Eagle Torres, former squadron leader in 894th Fighter Wing, decorated war hero, flight instructor of the year, 2003, and then the dark chapter, a training mission gone wrong. 2 pilots dead. Torres blamed for freezing at the controls during a critical moment. Court-martialed, stripped of his wings, disgraced. The newspapers called it the fall of a legend. Her assistant whispered, "He disappeared after the trial. No one knew what happened to him." Elena's hands trembled as she read further. Gabriel Torres had a 7-year-old daughter, Lily Torres, currently in surgery at Children's Hospital for a rare heart condition. Elena was in her limousine 20 minutes later. Yeah, she found him in the pediatric waiting room, still wearing his oil-stained coveralls. He sat, hunched in a plastic chair, his head in his hands. He looked exactly like what everyone thought he was, a broken-down mechanic with nowhere else to go. But Elena had seen his hands steady on those controls. She had watched him bring a falling plane home with the skill of a master. "Gabriel," he looked up, surprised. "Miss Martinez. What are you doing here?" "I came to thank the man who saved my life." She sat down beside him. "I also came to apologize. We treated you horribly." Gabriel shook his head. Nobody special. Just a father trying to get to his daughter." "You're wrong." Elena's voice was firm. "You're exactly who I've been looking for. I'm starting a new aviation safety company. I need someone who understands both the technical side and what it means to have everything on the line." Gabriel stared at her. "You want to hire me?" "I want to hire the best pilot I've ever seen." Elena pulled out a business card. "Captain Torres." A doctor appeared in scrubs, smiling. "Mr. Torres, Lily's surgery was a complete success. She's asking for her daddy." Gabriel's eyes filled with tears. For the first time in 20 years, everything was going to be okay. As he walked toward his daughter's room, Elena called after him, "Captain, welcome back to the sky."
What a powerful story, friends. I had chills when Elena found Silas sleeping by his daughter's side. It taught me a lesson I will never forget. Heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear dirty mechanic uniforms and have trembling hands. Silas swallowed his pride, endured insults, all to save the very people who mocked him. That is true strength. Never judge someone by their current struggles. You never know what greatness lies in their past. If this story touched your heart, please share it and subscribe. I'm Vera, and I'll see you next time.